I just saw a second plane come in from the south.
Big explosion happened. Some guy came out, his skin was all off.
News with Paul Taylor.
Good evening and welcome to this 10-minute special statewide edition of Win Local News, followed by a return to our national 9 News coverage live at 6. Former President Bill Clinton, who's been holidaying in Port Douglas, is on his way back to the United States. A short time ago, a giant US military transporter landed at Cairns Airport to take Mr. Clinton home. His presence in Queensland during this awful day for the world heads our coverage. We begin tonight's special edition with a report from Win journalist Alistair Kingston, who's been at Port Douglas since early this morning.
Thanks, Paul. While Bill Clinton might be a former president of the United States, local authorities aren't taking any chances with his safety.
We're just taking the usual precautions for obviously a high-profile person as Mr. Clinton. With the events that have transpired overseas, we've got to take that into consideration.
Police officers came and went throughout the day and night, but Mr. Clinton wasn't going anywhere or saying anything, making no contact with a 20-strong media contingent camped outside, not sharing his thoughts on the current crisis. Guests leaving the hotel who've seen the former president say his mood is sombre, in stark contrast to last night, where he was seen sharing a drink with members of his entourage at a local hotel. But as news on the former president's movements come to hand, we'll bring it to you first on Win.
At airports around the state, stunned American travellers are trying to come to terms with the tragedy. Many scheduled on flights back to the States, their journey now to be suspended in Sydney. Left with little to do but ponder what family and friends may be feeling back home and wonder who would carry out such an horrific act of terrorism.
We used to come out of Papua New Guinea and everything, but basically the same things, I guess, the rest of the world. I'd like to see whoever done this is punished. It's a bit unbelievable. Didn't think something like that can happen, but obviously it can.
It was at airports this global terrorism started. In Queensland today, they weren't taking any chances. Meantime, around the city, feelings were the same. Shock, horror, and sheer disbelief.
My husband wasn't able to sleep, and he got up and he turned on the TV about 1 in the morning, and he came and woke me up and said, "You've got to come see this. It's just horrible."
It almost seems like a movie set or something like that. It hasn't sunk in yet.
Some tourists spent the morning emailing home. Others couldn't tear themselves from the screen, a sense of helplessness descending.
There is nothing that keeps all of us safe from horrible, 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 demonic people.
By mid-morning, there were memorial services underway across Queensland for the victims of this terrible act of terrorism. Parishioners lighting candles as a symbol of hope on this dark day in world history. Prayers for those who've lost their lives, for their families, for the injured. The hymns at this service, not unlike many, sung around the state. There are hundreds of American students studying throughout Queensland. They hold terrible concerns for their loved ones, as do many Queenslanders with relatives living or travelling in the United States.
8:30 this morning and the flags at this university were being lowered as a sign of respect. There's more than 50 American students at this Rockhampton campus. They were today holed up in their dorms. Like in Toowoomba, Cairns, Townsville and the Sunshine Coast, US students throughout are undergoing counselling.
My aunt was actually right under the building, right as the second plane crashed into it. And some of the debris fell on her, but she got out fine.
Stunned Americans out here on business aren't leaving their hotel rooms, like San Francisco resident Judy Galani.
I don't live there, but it doesn't matter. Just the magnitude of this crime just, it rips me apart.
There are thousands of Queenslanders in the States, students, travellers, business people. Back home, anxious loved ones waited for any news. Business was also slow today as many stayed home to watch the coverage. Those that ventured out, though, weren't far from the news. The emotion all too much for some.
I've been to Pearl Harbor. This is far worse than Pearl Harbor. Far worse, yeah.
Why? You know, and all those innocent people. You know, it's just a weird and a sick waste of life. The whole world's going to have to sit back and listen and say, you know, if they can do this in America, they can do it anyway.
As you can imagine, communication to New York is difficult. The Department of Foreign Affairs has a special helpline. The number to ring is 1-800-00-2214. That's 1-800-00-2214. Queensland's Defence Force personnel have been placed on a heightened state of alert. The RAAF and Army called to duty as early as 3 a.m. The entire nation is on weathercock amber. Every soldier and civilian entering military barracks is being searched.
As the world woke to the horror of the terrorist attack on America, Queensland soldiers woke to the call of duty. The federal government placing Australia's Defence Force on weathercock amber, the nation's second highest level of defence readiness. Security is at an optimum. Barracks have become fortresses. Every car searched, no one allowed in without identification.
All of the operational matters are matters that we shouldn't discuss. They can be invoked and the soldiers know what they mean.
As thousands of troops answered the call to duty, early morning traffic banked up for as far as the eye could see. This 5-car pile-up inevitable. Between 4 and 5 this afternoon, no soldier was allowed to leave the barracks.
They understand the need to live on base if it's necessary, to be on a short notice to move.
While the state comes to terms with the enormity of the massive terrorist attack, questions are being asked about the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in Brisbane and the Sunshine Coast next month. With terrorism now a very real threat, this morning the Premier called an urgent security meeting.
Standards of planning have been maintained at the highest international level, and we stand prepared to host the event.
With 50 of the world leaders due here in just weeks, the Police Commissioner has assured the public the police service will remain vigilant. Meanwhile, Communications Minister Richard Alston, who's visiting the coast, was called to an urgent Cabinet telephone link-up this morning. He also mirrored the Premier's thoughts.
At this stage, on the basis of intelligence available to us, there's no reason why Choggum shouldn't proceed.
The Prime Minister will make the final decision when he returns from the US.
To other news around Queensland, and Toowoomba police were involved in a high-speed car chase overnight. With officers in hot pursuit, the driver lost control of his stolen vehicle just after 9:30 before he and the 2 passengers fled into a nearby complex.
Centre, people on Anzac Avenue are only too happy to assist the police. Pointed out they've gone this way, they've gone that way, and obviously are in great assistance.
2 men have been arrested, police still searching for a 3rd offender. Traffic on the Toowoomba Range also came to a standstill today. A truck spilling diesel, sending another out of control. Motorists experiencing delays of up to 3 hours. Meanwhile, a decision was made to go ahead today with the opening of a new $90 million state-of-the-art prison in Rockhampton, despite Correctional Minister Tony McGrady unable to attend due to security concerns over Choggum. The Correctional Centre will house more than 500 inmates, which will be transferred from the old prison next week. The jail will feature a barber shop, surgery, crisis centre and training facilities. Member for Rockhampton, Robert Schwarten, has ruled out any possibility the old prison may be used as a detention centre.
That's something that has cropped up from time to time, but has been ruled out time and time again.
The jobs of Queensland's Ansett employees are still under threat, with Qantas deciding against purchasing its stricken rival today. Qantas says Ansett's problems are far too great for it to take on. Ansett is reportedly losing $1.3 million a day. Ansett's owner, Air New Zealand, has proposed its subsidiary be liquidated and reformed as a new value-based airline. Air New Zealand says new potential purchasers for Ansett have surfaced, but the company still needs Australian government underwriting. That's still not good news for Queenslanders. There may not be an Ansett on many of our regional routes. Still with business news, and the share market was rocked by today's terrorism attack. Banks took a hiding, as did media stocks. Airline and travel stock also nosedived. The All Ords hit the bottom, down 131. We'll be now that is it for our full coverage today. We have got weather, of course, so to that it's Gemma Haines. Gemma.
Thanks, Paul. Before we get back to our coverage, let's have a quick look at the day's weather. The temperatures across the state today were pretty much right on target for this time of year. There was very little rainfall in the 24 hours to 9 this morning, with only some isolated light falls about the southeast districts. On the state satellite image, in some areas of cloud can be seen over southeast Queensland, extending into the southern parts of the Central Highlands and coalfields. This is associated with a weak surface trough. Now, nationally, an upper trough is responsible for the cloud over northwestern Australia and the northwestern parts of Queensland. A low pressure system in Sydney is bringing extensive cloud to South Australia, New South Wales and around the Victorian region there. Tonight's chart shows a weak high pressure system off the Queensland coast. That high is directing humid air over Queensland ahead of a trough which extends down to a low near Sydney. The trough will probably arrive on the Queensland coast tomorrow morning, probably bringing isolated showers or storms later tonight. To tomorrow's forecast now, and the state, it'll be fine throughout. Cairns and Townsville will both reach a maximum 28 degrees. Charters Towers will get to a top of 31 after an overnight low of 16. Rockhampton 29, Emerald 26. Toowoomba will get to a maximum of 20 degrees. The Sunshine Coast will be fine and 24. Emerald will have a low of 11 and Toowoomba will get to a low of 10. Now, Paul, that's back to you.
Thank you, Gemma. Just repeating, Bill Clinton is on the move. The former president should be on his way home shortly on a giant military transporter from Cairns. We'll keep you posted as the evening progresses. In the meantime, we'll take you back now to National 9 News.